How many games will the Cowboys win in 2022 now that we know their schedule and what is the toughest part of their schedule? All that and more in this episode of Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, you see the Cowboys schedule. How many games did they win this season?
17. It's
17.
Easy.
There you go. That's a good way to start the podcast off.
We'll go through it a little bit. Obviously, I think the exercise of kind of trying to tick off games, literally as the schedule gets released, is a little foolhardy. But look, we're here to be a little bit foolhardy this early in the season,
here, right?
So that's certainly it'll be a fun exercise. But it's I gotta say, it's a very different kind of schedule. I'm excited to kind of get into it because it looks very different. Things are laid out a little differently than I feels like a normal Dallas Cowboys schedule would.
Yeah, let's get right into it. Let's do a rapid fire win by win. Game by game. I mean, that's a Freudian slip. Game by game prediction here. Let's start week 1 against Tampa Bay.
I kind of feel like you almost have to loop those first 2 games together, the first 2 home games. Yeah. I think you come out of that. If you can come out of that 1-1, I think you got to feel pretty good about yourself. I mean, one of them is a former Super Bowl champion, and the other one is a former last year's Super Bowl contender. So I think those are 2 very good teams. You get them both at home, which is nice. Obviously, it's a little bit easier. I love having the Bucs week 1 again. I really do, because I thought that it gave the Cowboys something to really focus on towards, working towards on week 1. I think it will again. It's certainly better than the monotonous kind of New York Giants, season openers we had, I think, in the last decade. So I'm excited, and hopefully they can get out of that run 1-1 at least. And then you look, what do you think after that? Like, it feels like, you have the 2 games in the NFC East. You play the Rams, and the Rams, that's going to be a tough game to win, I think. I think you
need to look at the schedule in chunks, right?
Yeah.
I look at the first 6 weeks of the season. Tampa, Bengals, Giants, Washington, Rams, Eagles. If you can get out of there at 3-3 at worst, they're going to be fine. Honestly, they're going to be just fine. If you're 4-2 or better, okay, we're having a different conversation. But 3-3 has to be at least the bare minimum in the first 6 weeks of the season.
There's 4 problematic clusters of games in this schedule. I think the first 2 are difficult, obviously, even if you're playing it at home. I think the at Rams and at Eagles back to back is going to be really difficult. I think the Eagles are an improved team. I still think the Cowboys are the better team, but I think that they're still going to be a better team than they were last year. I think coming out of the bye to play Green Bay is great for Dallas to get the bye to actually kind of prepare, but it's still going to be tough to do that at Green Bay and then turn around and do it at Minnesota as your kind of lead up into Thanksgiving weekend, which is then the following Thursday after that Minnesota game. That's going to be tough. And then finally that the Philadelphia Saturday night game followed by the Tennessee Titans the following Thursday. That's going to be, those I think are the kind of clusters of difficult games you have. And then outside of that, there's a lot of very winnable games for the Cowboys that they absolutely should be favored in, and likely the winner. I mean, they play the very kind of light-handed AFC South. So
we're going to go through different parts of the schedule, but let's just go through the games really quickly. Win-loss, just kind of see it. So we'll say 1-1 coming out of the first 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Giants, week 3.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys win that game.
Okay, 2-1. Washington, week 4.
I think the Cowboys beat Washington.
Okay, so we're 3-1 at this point. The Rams in week 5.
I think that's a tough game, especially playing on the West Coast. It's tough. So I think the Rams lose. I mean, the Cowboys win. The Cowboys lose. Sorry, the Cowboys lose that game.
So 3-2 going into week 6, playing the Eagles.
I think, look, if we're just knocking these off realistically, let's say the Cowboys lose that game. I mean, I think if they're going to lose an NFC East game, it would probably be at Philadelphia. So I'm going to give them that one.
All right, 3-3 going into the game against the Lions here in Week 7.
I think you beat the Lions.
Okay, that's 4-3. The Bears the following week.
I think you obviously beat the Bears. You played both of these teams at home, which is obviously, I mean, not that you needed to necessarily, but it would make it a lot tougher if you're playing them in Chicago and Detroit.
All right. So 5-3 going into the bye. Again, if they're 4-4 or 5-3 going into the bye, they're going to be fine. They play the Packers in Week 10.
I'll take the pessimistic realist version of the schedule. So let's say they lose that game.
Okay, so that gives them a record of 5-4 after 9 games. The Vikings the following week.
And I think they beat the Vikings
6-4. Then they play the Giants on Thanksgiving.
I think they kill the Giants again. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be nice. One time they have some turkey and apple pie without tears in it. So that gives us what, 7-4, right? Or 6-4?
I don't know. You were keeping track of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
6-4.
Colts.
I think the Cowboys win. I don't know. I mean, the Colts are kind of an enigma to me, and you might have a better feel for that covering an AFC team. But with Ryan, I don't really know. I don't know how that's going to form together quite yet, I guess.
Okay.
What do you think?
That's a tough game. That's the type of team that the Cowboys probably don't match up well against. The run control or ball control, play defense, run the ball like crazy. But I think they can win that game. So we have them going 7-4. Then they play the Texans.
I think they beat the Texans.
Okay, 8-4, Jacksonville.
I think they beat Jacksonville.
9-4, Eagles on Christmas Eve.
I think they beat the Eagles at home on Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas, everybody.
So that would actually be, I believe that would be 11-4. Sorry. Titans in Week 17.
I think they could. Yeah, they probably at Tennessee might be a very tough game. It's a late game. Tennessee's a good team, so let's say that's a loss.
So that is 11-5.
5, yeah.
And then Washington in Week 18.
And I think they beat Washington.
So you've got them going 12-5.
Well, maybe at that point, if they're 11 and let's say they're what was it, 11-5?
11-5.
Right. Maybe they risk some guys and they lose a backups game in Washington. So
yeah, I went through the schedule by myself, kind of doing the same exercise. It feels like their range of wins is somewhere between 9-8 and like 12-5. Like they're going to be somewhere in between there. There's going to be at least one game in here where they're favored, they slip up. I kind of think Detroit could potentially be one of those games. I think Detroit's better than what maybe the record will say. I think
the Colts could easily be that game, honestly.
Yeah, I could also see Jacksonville if Trevor Lawrence just really takes off under Doug.
Yeah, because it's the end of the season, so maybe they've really kind of figured it out a little bit. That wouldn't shock me, I guess.
Yeah. All right, I want to continue breaking down this schedule, Landon. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about BetOnline. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering needs, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's just look at the first 8 or 9 games of the season. Actually, let's just do the first before the bye week. So the first 8. So that's Bucks, Bengals, Giants, Washington, Rams, Eagles, Lions, Bears. I was actually just on the Bleacher Report show, and I said, I think a lot of people are expecting the Cowboys to start off the season 0-2 or 1-1, and if they'll be okay if they do that, right? Because the rest of the schedule opens up. But I propose this: what happens if we get out of the first 2 weeks of the season and the Cowboys are 2-0? They beat both of those teams, and now you're looking at the rest of the schedule like there might only be 2 games where they're not favored in. If the Cowboys can get off to a quick start and win both of those games, Landon, like we're talking about maybe this team being the number 1 seed in the NFC. Like that's how important the start is to the season to them.
Yeah, I mean, especially if let's say the Cowboys go 7-1, right? Like, I mean, that's not unrealistic with this first slate, right? Like they somehow managed to win those first 2 games at home. They lose to the Rams in Los Angeles. Even with an NFC loss to the Rams, you have to wonder if you're still within striking distance of the NFC title, and with a game against Green Bay still left to play, and that really, I mean, if something like that really happened, obviously that Green Bay game suddenly becomes super important.
Yep.
Beating another top NFC game team that's going to be vying for seeding at that point. So I think that there's a range of outcomes that could happen, at several different points of the schedule, but I do think that, and I think we talked about it, in on Twitter a little bit earlier. I like having Cincinnati and Tampa in the first 2 weeks of the season because, as we've said, the first 2 weeks of the season are basically the preseason. There's a lot of variance there.
Yep.
Teams haven't figured things out quite yet. Even the kind of more, veteran teams, it's still you're having a rebuilding process. So there's just a lot that can happen, the lot that can go wrong. And when you're talking about the Cowboys situation where they're probably going to be the dogs in both of those games, you want that extra variance. You want that extra roll of the dice happening. So, I think that could really play in the Cowboys' favor.
We should also mention week 1 against Tampa Bay. That is a Sunday night football game in primetime. Week 3 against the Giants. That's a Monday night football game, 8:15 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. And then the game against the Eagles in week 6. That's another Sunday night football game. So 3 primetime games in the first 6 weeks. In the first half of this schedule, Landon, what game are you the most excited to watch?
I mean, that Tampa Bay game was so much fun last year. Like, so I'm kind of excited to see the rematch in the first half of the schedule. I think that and the Rams game to me really stand out. I mean, the Bengals are obviously, they were Super Bowl contenders last year. So they're exciting as well. But I think both the Bucks and the Rams games have huge implications throughout the Cowboys season, and also are the games that feature, I think, the most interesting matchups between the two teams.
You know what my brain went to when I saw Tampa Bay? Wasn't Brady versus Dak or last year's week 1 game. It was Tyler Smith against Vita Vea. Might be kind of rough, but also kind of fun to watch, right? There might be an earthquake on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I like his chance with Tyler Smith versus Connor Williams, and they were trying to single block.
Well, it's also going to be nice that hopefully Zach Martin plays in this game, considering he
didn't
play it last year at all, right?
Another
thought. There's absolutely no way that you can have anybody but Tyler Biotish start this game at center. Like, Alex Lindstrom cannot play against Vita Vea in his first NFL game, right?
Yeah. I mean, is it the other kid? I mean, that's Farniak.
James
I think.
Oh, I thought you were talking about your BYU center.
Oh yeah, no. It'll be tough if it ends up having to be a rookie against Vita Vea. That would be an extremely difficult matchup. Even if it's Farniak, who hasn't really started a game, I don't think started. So, I would say Tyler Biotish. I mean, has an inside track at least, and he's played against that guy again before.
Yeah. All right. Let's dive into the rest of the schedule, because I think the back half is actually more interesting.
Yeah,
because of some of the way the games are laid out. But before we talk about those games, I want to tell you guys about Built Bar. We got to tell you about this new product that they have: birthday cake puffs.
Oh my god!
Yeah. Have you
so
tried
good.
one yet?
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
I love them so much.
I've never had anything like this before. It's like that big tub of birthday cake frosting that you used to get. You just dip your finger right in and you have some of that. It's exactly like that, except for it's only 150 calories and 16 grams of protein. If you haven't tried it, go to built.com right now and order at least a box of those. Absolutely fantastic. Plus, they've got so many other great flavors, including they've got coconut. They've got the peanut butter brownie chunk. I like the peanut butter right now. My wife likes the cookies and cream. Go to built.com. Use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, let's go through the back end of the schedule. Packers after the bye. They did split up the Thanksgiving split that we're used to. We're used to having them play
they did.
Thursday, Sunday. Now they're going to play the Giants on Thursday for the Thanksgiving game. Then they're going to play on Sunday. So you get that 10-day break. You get another couple 10-day breaks. And then you play Saturday on Christmas Eve against the Eagles. And then Thursday against the Tennessee Titans. So I like this way better for the Cowboys because usually if you're playing on Sunday and you're playing Thursday, that's a short break. Now at least you get 5 days to prepare for the Titans game. It's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I do. The saving grace there is, first of all, if you're giving us the option between doing 3 games in 12 days, which is not abnormal for teams that do this, but it's just that the Cowboys have done it every year. If since they've done Thursday night games, if you're not going to do that, if this is the alternative, and then on top of that, we get that extra day because we play on Saturday the week before, so you get a 5-day break as opposed to having 2 4-day breaks within one season. I think that's a lot more palatable. It's just one of those things where the 12 days, 3 games in 12 days was incredibly difficult. And I know, like I said, I know other teams have dealt with it, but like all it takes, especially in like COVID situations, was something like Amari Cooper's situation where he got this. And I don't know if we're dealing with those protocols or whatever, but the point is that all it takes is like a short-term injury, and a short-term injury, a 3-week injury could be 3 games without a doubt, maybe even 4. So it's just like a lot more manageable to kind of at least allow for hopefully fewer really short weeks, and even if you have 2 shorter weeks, one of them's a 5-day week, which is better than normal.
And I've seen this on Twitter even today. They say every team plays 3 games in 12 days. It's true, but the difference is most teams aren't playing 2 games in when you play that short game, right, from Sunday to Thursday, you usually get 10 days to recover from that stretch. Yeah. The way that the Cowboys had it the last couple of years was Sunday, Thursday. So the benefit of playing that Thursday game is you get a longer break. That wasn't the case for the Cowboys. They had a regular scheduled week after that. That was pretty hard on some of their bodies at the late season point. So I like this much better. I know that you have 2 stretches in there where you're playing on short rest, but because it's able to be spaced out a little bit more, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, and I think especially last year, what made it brutal is that you were playing some pretty good teams in all those games. So it was a difficult stretch of teams to play and the brutalness of the body. I think with this, you just are coming out of your bye week. You'll have a difficult emotional game against Green Bay, but then you play Minnesota. You'll get your short week against a familiar opponent with the Giants that you've already played at that point, right? You should be favored. And then, then you've got some extra time to kind of deal with your 2 unfamiliar opponents at home in the Colts and the Texans. So,
and what I like about that Colts stretch too is you're home against the Giants, and then you don't play the Colts till Sunday night, right? So that's a long time to get ready for that game. If you can get out of that stretch between Vikings, Giants, Colts at 2-1, I think you're going to be okay.
I got to say, one of the things that really stood out to me in this schedule is how, I don't want to say easy, and I'm really jinxing us, but like how much less of a kind of gauntlet that the Cowboys have to go through in December. It's just so normal that the Cowboys are having to play these really difficult, schedules in December, often because they're wanting to put the Cowboys on TV. So they want these high ratings games, but sometimes because the NFC East is better than it has been. But it just feels like you play the Eagles, you play the Titans. I get that. But the fact that you get the kind of the worst chunk of the AFC South all in December, basically, you get almost the entirety AFC South in December. Right. So it's just really, I don't know. It's interesting. It's very different than what the Cowboys are used to. It almost feels like you'll have an idea you probably will have a pretty good idea before Christmas where the Cowboys are in the standings, at least for the NFC East.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that we should mention is the weather. They don't really have very many games. So I think you're gonna have to be concerned about the weather. You kind of work
Yeah.
backwards. Washington, yeah, the weather could be messy for that one, but man, Week 18 games are rarely relevant. I mean,
But
the final game of the season.
the other thing too, again, the fact that you're playing at Washington at the end of the year is actually probably a great thing, because if you are playing up to what we've just said, you could have that whole thing wrapped up and maybe hopefully not even have to, play starters in that terrible field that is bound to hurt at least 3 players who play on it that game, So that's, you have to play on that field every season, but to have it at the Week 18 gives you at least the opportunity that if you play well enough, maybe your players don't have to expose their bodies to it.
Yeah, and then you play the Tennessee game. That is in Dallas, or that's in Tennessee.
No, that's in Tennessee. Yeah, so that one could be a little. That they have an outdoor stadium, right? So that could be,
but
that could be a little bit chilly.
Nashville is going to be. I mean, it'll be colder. But
it'll be cold. Yeah,
it'll be
but
colder.
it won't.
But I don't think we're going to have terrible weather. Then they play home against Philadelphia, at Jacksonville. That'll be fine. Home against the Texans. Home against the Colts. Home against the Giants. At the Vikings inside. At Green Bay in November. I mean, all things considered, it's not a bad time to play the Packers, right? In the middle of the season. It'll be colder, but
it won't be December or January.
You're not playing in the snow. And so
it's mid-November too. It's just getting like colder, so
they'll be fine.
It'll be cold, but not that cold.
Yeah. Last question before we head out. How are we going to make sure that we don't get divorced with this stretch of Thanksgiving game, Christmas Eve game? How are we going to survive that?
I mean, we're just gonna have to be really good husbands up until season starts. Because and honestly, I don't know how I'm gonna figure it out. I mean, selfishly, I got so much traveling to do. I thought about maybe seeing if I can make that Eagles game, but we got to figure out a way to get you to that Tennessee game if that can make that happen.
That'd be a lot of fun. Well, I just found out my sister's actually going to be home during that stretch. So it's like, of course they had to play the Titans when she's going to be home.
You just need a house sit. You just need a house sit for one night, right? Yeah, you'll be fine.
Cowboys and Raiders both play on Christmas Eve, which is it's a telltale sign that I'm going to be single, right?
I wanted to apologize when I saw that, because I was like, wow, that's just unbelievable. Good luck.
All right. So Tampa Bay, Week 1. I can tell you some news now. We're going to have a crossover show with David Harrison at Locked On Bucks next week to start talking about this Week 1 matchup. It's a little soon.
Wow. Already, huh?
I mean, he's ready to go. But, man, we've done these shows before. We've went game by game on the schedule. It's pretty manageable, and it doesn't seem terrible.
Look, I mean, now that we've kind of calmed ourselves from the off-season hysterics, we've been through the draft. Look, we still don't know what we've got from the draft. We still got a lot of boxes to open up to figure out exactly what we're going to get from this team. The team hasn't even been assembled yet. So, but looking at the schedule as it is, it makes you, once you kind of actually get to start, visualizing the games and like thinking about the situations and the matchups as we know them right now, it makes you feel a little bit better about your situation. It makes you become more realistic about what's happening. I think this is a schedule that is especially since it's so different than it normally is. It's different in a way that's favorable to the Cowboys, and I think they have a good chance this year.
Somebody say, can you imagine the panic when we're sitting at 0-2? It's going to be interesting to see what
I've seen it before. Yeah. I can imagine.
We should say, we've actually said this last year, like there's never been a year where 0-2 is more meaningless, right?
Yeah.
And if the
Cowboys only gotten more meaningless over time, right?
Yeah, and if I feel like with this one, if you go 0-2 and your losses are against two teams that, I mean, the Bengals were within a play of winning the Super Bowl last year, and the Bucks won a Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Yep.
It's not the worst thing in the world. Like you're not going to be out of it. Now, if you lose to the Giants in Week 3, that's when things start to get a little hairy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, especially if one of those two teams is an AFC team, it's like you hate to lose against anyone, but the fact that you're losing against an AFC team early in the season, it's like those are about as meaningless in the long stretch of things, games as they are.
All right, so your official prediction for the Cowboys 2022 season is 12-5?
Yeah, let's say 11-6.
Okay.
Yeah.
I debated between 11-6 and 10-7. I'll go 10-7 just because
It's you.
it's me. And there'll be a couple of weird games in here. Like, it would not shock me if they beat the Packers but lose to the Vikings the following week. Like, something like that'll happen. It just does. It's the NFL. So
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But that works both ways too. So for Cowboys fans that are pessimistic and optimistic, it never kind of plays out exactly as you expect it to, does it? But
no.
Sometimes the ball bounces. That's why the ball's oblong. Sometimes it bounces your way. Sometimes it bounces the other, right?
All right, that is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back on Monday to really start our off-season shows. We'll start getting ready for mini camps, which Cowboys will have a rookie mini camp over the weekend. Maybe we'll get some news and nuggets to talk about. We'll start some training camp previews because we're like 2 months away from the Cowboys reporting for training camp. It's going to all happen very, very fast. So follow the podcast wherever you get your podcast. You can check out the show on YouTube. Follow Landon at McCoolBCB. I am at Marcus_Mosher. And we'll see you guys next time.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on